Good morning, everyone. Lots going on, and there's always lots going on in Canadian politics these days. And it's wild. It's a wild and crazy ride, and man, let's just get into it. Let's get into it. But first, don't forget to sign up for the newsletter. The newsletter will probably go out Thursday this week, although I'm going to the cottage on a very essential trip. I have to check the plumbing. It's a yearly thing. We always do this, blah, 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 blah. And so I may be late on Thursday or Friday, but I'm not sure. We'll see. We'll see. But public service announcement, blah, blah, blah. And the newsletter might be late. But we'll see. We'll see. Probably not. I don't know. I like to work, so I'll be working in a new location for a few days. Anyway, regardless, you can also join the forum, CanadaPoly.com, and if you hit the forums, the CanadaPoly.com landing page looks different than this one, and if you hit the forums link, it'll bring you here. And yeah, we've got the one thing I've learned about soup making over 50 years. So experienced soup makers and Canadian politics. All right, let's get into it. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. This is from Waterloo. Waterloo and Kitchener are kind of funny places to live. You don't understand how they work until you've lived there for a few years. I worked there for a few years, and I got lost there more times than I can count, but now I understand how it works. So it's my old stomping ground in Waterloo. So yes, I think that that's true. The Waterloo Town Square has had some very robust protests in the past few weeks, and good speakers as well. Belinda Carriolas talks a lot there. So there's lots of stuff happening. I don't know that it's going to matter. Here's Greg, and he says, building back better. There's a planned, coordinated effort to fast-track a global agenda using COVID-19 as a very convenient means, and it's happening all over the world. I don't know convenient. I think COVID-19 was the lemons and that the lemonade is being made out of. I just think it is what it is, right? Trump wasn't part of the plan either, and look at what they did. Look at what happened during his presidency, right? Like, it wasn't like Trump was inciting violence, although people will say that he was. It wasn't like he was doing things that historically, within the context of a U.S. president, would incite the things that happened on U.S. soil during his presidency, and yet, right? So they get lemons, they make lemonade. It'll do, right? That's it. Man, it's like Babe. Anyway, so Greg says he's got links, right? Here's Biden with Building Back Better. Oh, I don't need to load this. Goodness. Biden with Building Back Better. The U.K. With Building Back Better. Here's Australia building back better, and Canada building back better, right? And we've all seen a lot of this stuff already. Greg continues, do you believe that this is all just a coincidence? These globalist NGOs have been apparently developing this plan for years. Here's 2018, right? And it goes, this is April 3rd, 2020. This is I don't know which one this is. 2018, and then further back, 2017. Right? Building Back Better, 2017, the consultative version, right? And then 2013, apparently goes all the way back to 2006, right? Wow. Isn't that wild? Building Back Better. And then it goes back to 2006, according to Greg, right? The concept of building back better has its roots in the improvement of land use, spatial planning. The term Build Back Better first caught international attention in 2006 during the recovery from the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. Number 6, Greg says, it cannot be put any more simply. We're witnessing a fast-tracked implementation of a global socialist technocracy. If you don't think this is a good idea, it's more important now than ever to research and share this information. For a more in-depth look at this important subject, see this thread of pictures, right? And Greg puts together some really interesting threads, and I think that it's worthwhile sharing this. For even more, see this thread, and this aligns with UN's Sustainable Development Agenda, on track for 2030. I think they hit their 2021 goals pretty well, right? I said there's no way they're going to curtail or cut air traffic as much as they say they need to by 2021. That would require shutting down an industry. Ho. Ate my words on that one, didn't I? Right. Michael Geist, getting into free speech and Bill C-10. Michael Geist says the Stephen Gellibo interview may be the worst yet. In 8 minutes, 1, he cites the wrong Bill C-10 section on user-generated content regulations. 2, he says government will regulate social media users with large number of viewers. 3, he says it isn't government regulating, says it's the CRTC, which, great. He also talks about how the CRTC has never regulated content in its history, right? It's never regulated content, so don't worry, internet users, your cat video is fine. The thing that I find interesting about the messaging here is when everybody thought that their video was going to be subject to this, or that they were going to be directly impacted by this, by their views being moderated. And I think that there are a lot of people who feel that because there are a lot of people who see either friends being moderated on Facebook, or they see in the scroll of Twitter or wherever, they see people being removed. They see the Twitter censorship, not the Twitter censorship necessarily, excuse me, the YouTube censorship. They see people being removed from YouTube who are talking about things that YouTube doesn't like. Part of the reason for my redacted show. And yesterday, that was a whole sampling that I totally did on purpose. No, I just grabbed the wrong file. So I got to pay closer attention to that. But yeah, they monetized that one. I thought that was wild and crazy, right? But anyway, people are watching other people's creative material being removed, even monetized people like Amazing Polly, who had 200,000 people subscribed to her on YouTube. She got destroyed. Her whole YouTube business, I don't know the rest of her business, but her whole YouTube business got put in a sandbox, and like, you are it's almost like social credit is already here. It's almost like it's already implemented, right? Chris Sky, Amazing Polly, there's some others who you're not good enough to have access to, like PayPal and all of these other YouTube, right? All of these mainstream services, not you, right? And if people want to listen to you, we're not gonna remove you, right? If you get my meaning. But as far as technology goes, may as well have, right? You see what I'm saying? Very interesting. And they want to do this now. So people are sensitive to this, whether they feel like their personal stuff that they're putting out there is going to be impacted necessarily, although I think people did think that. The government is trying to say, don't you worry, citizen. It's not your stuff that we're trying to regulate. Don't worry about this bill. What we're trying to do is pay the creators. I'm a creator? Bull. Garbage. They're not trying to pay me. Pay me? Sure. All you would have to do, Mr. Gellybo, is tell YouTube to index me just like I'm a weight loss video or something like that. Index me the same way as all other content, right? That's all that anybody would need to do. And then it would take care of itself, right? I would either be popular or not. But the limbo that people like me live in, not limbo, but I mean, it's like you're constantly, Sticks and Hammer was talking about it the other day, you're just at the same amount of viewership, and you think, oh, okay, well, maybe it's too long, the content, or maybe it's too short. Maybe I'm, rambling on or whatever, blah, 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 blah. But the way things are is disincentivizing creators, and not because the Canadian government is trying to be helpful. I think it's because the Canadian government is already soft implementing a version of C10, a version of the censorship that they want to implement. Look at Rebel News, right? YouTube got rid of Rebel News just on a whim, right? PayPal too, on a whim, right? Wild. And how do you play by the rules when you can't know the rules, right? When the rules are ever changing, and it's just like, oh, you violated the terms of service that we changed yesterday, and you didn't violate them since yesterday to today. You violated these new terms of service 6 months ago. How dare you? Right? That's what's going on. That's what's happening, right? So Gellybo wants to make this enshrined, and here is, well, he's just wrapping up the interview. The interview itself is typical of Gellybo. He meanders, he mumbles, he stumbles. So, well, here's the whole interview. Here's just one clip that I think is worthwhile watching. So we'll watch this one. It's a minute long. Here we go.
This is the fundamental debate. I feel like we're driving past each other here. If the CRTC can put that, you're regulating it.
You have, as I said, individuals are exempt from this law, or will be once it's adopted. And what we want to do, this law should apply to people who are broadcasters or who act like broadcasters. So if you have YouTube channels with millions of viewers and you're deriving revenues from that, then at some point the CRTC will be asked to put a threshold. But we're talking about broadcasters here. We're not talking about everyday citizens posting stuff on their YouTube channel. It has to have a material. I mean, the criteria here, I think you're looking for it. It has to have a material impact on the Canadian economy. That's what we will ask the CRTC to look for.
A material impact on the Canadian. That's not what I want to do.
I feel like
a material impact on the Canadian economy. That seems odd, right? Like, what does that mean? A material impact. So you have to be as big as Rogers, or you have to be as big as Rebel, or you have to be as big as what? Right? Because does Rebel have a material impact on the Canadian economy? How many employees does your situation have to employ in order to facilitate being regulated by the CRTC? It's a weird poison pill, right? You want to grow your business. You want to increase your viewership. You want more people to listen to your show. Hopefully they like your show and tell other people about it, and so on and so forth. And then you grow. That's the whole point. And growth increases. It's good for me, it's good for you, right? That's, you get a product that you like, I get to do something that I enjoy and get financially rewarded for it, right? Everybody wins. But in this case, if I grow to a certain level, no good, because all of a sudden I'm going to be regulated by the CRTC, right? All of a sudden I'm going to trigger something that's going to say, the Canadian government now looks at you like this, and sorry, you need to do X, Y, and Z in order to comply with this law. And it's like, you can't continue to do your show the way, or to do the thing that you're doing, whatever it is, the way that you were doing it to grow to that level. Now you have to comply with a whole bunch of new regulations that didn't apply before, right? How does this make any sense? It's a poison pill for growth. It enshrines the big guys and makes sure that anybody coming up basically is locked into the same model that they're forced to play in now. And if that's true, then they enshrine their position and they continue to hold the power, right? I think that maybe that could be a reason. That could be a reason why they're looking to push this, but people don't like it, right? The Globe and Mail is pushing this. This is a politics article. It says, dishonest censorship scare may torpedo Bill C-10, a chance to update broadcasting laws for the modern era. It's not dishonest. The concerns about this bill, the regulations that they want to implement are vague and not at all a reasonable way to go about implementing this. And giving the CRTC power to regulate some users, some undefined group of users, when they hit an undefined metric to do what? To accomplish what? What's the purpose of this? To pay users? So once you get to a certain level, all of a sudden you start having to give your part of your revenue to other people who aren't as popular as you, right? Facebook has to start paying for Canadian content. Well, good luck, right? Like how to do that in this censorship landscape, right? I don't know. It's very interesting, but it's interesting that the Globe and Mail is taking the position that the dishonest censorship scare, that the positioning on this, the backlash from the people who have to deal with this, from the news broadcasters to reporters to people like me and people, Ezra Levent, etc., is dismissed by Kate Taylor. She thinks, no, that's dishonest. That's dishonest criticism. I don't think it is. It's very, very concerning what's going on in our country, and not only for the censorship, but much more. Michael Geist says, Canada's former Justice Minister rightly asks why Stephen Gellibo thinks user-generated content that attracts a large number of viewers or followers turns them into a broadcaster to be regulated by the CRTC. He says that's the plan in Bill C-10. When does internet following and therefore content uploaded by an individual make someone a broadcaster to be regulated by the CRTC? Right? Great question, Mr. Wilson-Raybould. Right? Okay. Yesterday I was talking about the pastor that got arrested and the small business owner that got arrested in Alberta. I think that they're trying, these are test balloons, trying out the legal frameworks, trying to see what they can do exactly. It's interesting to see the response to all of this. It's interesting to see how people are ignoring it or saying that they're glad that the pastor's in jail. It's interesting to see that some pastors are drawing the false comparison of putting chairs in exit rows, right? Like, oh, you can't run your church if these chairs are in the exit rows. And I think it's a false comparison in a lot of ways, but I think that it's interesting the way it's being discussed online, right? Very interesting. Peter McAfee says, Premier Kenney spent 6 months saying he couldn't enforce COVID restrictions because in a democracy, politicians don't direct police actions. Right? I remember that argument in Ontario too. Then last week, he announced enforcement would be increased and suddenly everyone's getting arrested. So which is it? Which is it, right? Yeah, wow, wild. Here's the jailhouse interview with Pastor Art Pulowski. And it's an interesting interview. It's 2 minutes long. You should go and listen to it. This is Bubba, and he says, Pastor Pulowski in bare concrete cell, no bed, no blanket, lights on 24/7. Sounds like torture to me. Jailhouse interview with Pastor Arthur Pulowski. How is it that that is reasonable in Canada? I heard that he wasn't allowed to speak to his lawyer. I heard that the enforcement was, he was laying on, like handcuffed, right, and laying down in the car for an 1.5-hour trip. That's not very nice. That's not very comfortable. These things seem punitive. I've known people who worked in custody facilities. I worked in mental health. You don't treat people in your charge like that. That's not okay. That's not okay generally, right? So that's interesting that that's happening, and that's being articulated. And did you think that happened in Canadian prisons and Canadian jail cells? I didn't. Maybe I was naive. Maybe that was naive of me. I was shocked when I heard the interview. Really, very, very shocked. Shocking. Also, in Manitoba, repeated violations of Manitoba COVID-19 health orders will bring increased fines, said the Premier. Manitoba Premier Brian Pallister took aim on Friday at those who rebuff Manitoba's COVID-19 public health orders after admonishing people who refuse to abide by the rules and those who are antagonistic towards public health enforcement officers. He said fines for repeat offenders would double. The vast majority of Manitobans are following the fundamentals. They're following the rules. I say thank you for doing that, and please keep doing that, Pallister said. But there's a small, selfish minority of people that aren't doing their part, and in doing so, they're putting the health of themselves and others at risk. Okay, so let me get this straight. I just want to make sure I understand. The large majority of Albertans are doing what they need to do, and so a large majority is following the orders or whatever, right? And presumably, that's having an impact on cases. Is he trying to say that a small majority of people are driving all of the cases in Manitoba? Is that what he's trying to do? He's trying to say that this group of people who are saying that our freedom matters more than your rules, and by any measure, I've heard, anyway, being out in public, the mask compliance is somewhere above 98%. Right? Like you look around and it's like, if you see somebody else who's unmasked, either you look like you smile at them and like, hey, we're kind of the same, or you smile at them and they look horrified and they run out of the store and come back with a mask on, but you don't know because you can't recognize them anymore. Right? I had that happen. I was walking out of a store and somebody was walking in without a mask and they saw me and they went, oh, and they ran out of the store and opened the car door. Like as I was walking with my groceries, he opened the car door, put a mask on and gave me a dirty look as he walked in, which I thought was funny. I was like, oh, okay. I thought, oh yeah, good job, man. Right? I was like, you know, and oh goodness. Anyway, very funny. Maybe it's just me. You had to be there. Anyway, a small minority. Back to this. Pallister also announced the doubling of the default payment fee for those who fail to pay fees on time. They're using everything they can to put this stuff. They're making de facto laws in order to enforce this stuff, but they can't do that. And you know what's going to happen? I'll read this to you. People are just going to stop getting driver's licenses. They're just going to be like, yeah, I don't have a driver's license because Pallister's like, because this is insane, because this doesn't make any sense at all. But we have basic rule of law. We have a process. We have precedent, more than 100 years of precedent. This is how this works. If you want to make a law, you do it this way, right? You don't have the medical officer of health make a declaration and then do an end run saying, if you don't listen to the medical officer of health declaration and the fines that are a part of that declaration, then we're going to take your license, sir. We're going to not let you use the services in the province. That's what they're doing. Okay, back to this. Here it is. Pallister doubling of fines. According to recent data, 90% of the money from pandemic-related fines in Manitoba have yet to be paid. Pallister promised that that would be taken care of through some stringent measures, okay? Quote, I'm saying to those folks, you will pay your fine. And if you do not, you will not be driving your car. We will not issue you a driver's license. You can put your car up on blocks and you can leave it there until you pay your fine, he said. And if you don't drive, we will garnish your wages. You will pay. It's important for you to understand this clearly. Your behavior is a danger to you, but it's more importantly, a danger to other people, he said. Pallister urged people to keep the rules in mind this Mother's Day weekend. That includes no visiting anyone at their private residence. Give your mother flowers, not COVID, he said. What an awful thing to live through. I'm sorry that we're living through this. I am. I'm truly sorry that we're living through this. Awful. It's terrible. What these leaders are doing to us is terrible. This is an atrocity that we are living through. Honestly, this is insanity. This is not how leadership works. Okay, one more tab and then we'll go to redacted. No, we've got a bit more to go. As of March 1st, the RCMP had issued 129 fines totaling $162,000, $162,167 under the Quarantine Act. Wow, how awesome from the same RCMP that sat on their asses as Canada was shut down by domestic terrorists blockading and setting moving trains on fire. Priorities and orders from Trudeau. Yeah, iPolitics says at least 10 air travelers have been charged and 4 have been arrested for violating the Quarantine Act. Aren't there like laws that you could charge people with for throwing debris at trains or like lighting debris on fire on railroad tracks as a train is traveling by them? Weren't there police standing there at the time watching this happen? There's nothing they could possibly do, but those airport people, those people who are defying the COVID rules, we got them. We got them on. We've got facial recognition matched up to Facebook, and we know their address, right? But we couldn't possibly do anything about the protesters on the railway tracks. There's nothing we could do about that. The politicians don't direct police, don't you know? Very, very scary. Very scary, right? That's the state of Canada. That's the state of, that's my brother. That's the state of what's going on in the world, right? Wild. Anyway, he says, getting into drugs. Drugs are a big, big issue, and I've been talking about opium overdoses for a while, and unfortunately, the opium is killing a lot of people. And in this situation, one of the MLAs is holding people accountable in Alberta. He says, Jordan says, we do good work on holding MLAs accountable. Memo sent to the mayor of Grand Prairie by request from the health minister of Alberta. Take note, 4 COVID-19 deaths in 2020, 33 opium deaths. Okay, and this is a long letter. I'm not going to read it right now because I've got lots of tabs to get through. But here's another opium report from yesterday in Toronto. Toronto Public Health is raising the alarm after paramedics responded to 13 suspected opiate overdose deaths over a 5-day period, one of the worst clusters of such deaths since the agency began collecting data in 2017. Terrible. There's a lot of people being killed by opium, and it seems like nobody really cares about that. Or when they do care about that, I've talked about this before, they're like, we should increase the safe injection sites. In Guelph, before we had a safe injection site, or in 2019, there were 7 people who died of a drug overdose. In 2020, that went up to 15 people. So the intervention of the safe injection site increased the number of opium deaths by more than 100%. Is this a good use of our money? I've talked about this many times, right? Many times. Having interventions like that give out free drugs, that don't tie the help to the stoppage of the negative behavior or the negative bad health outcomes. It's got all sorts of negatives to it, right? Don't usually work. It doesn't usually work, right? For long-term giving it up, like, it doesn't usually work. So anyway, but I mean, addiction is a whole other monster, well beyond the scope of this podcast. Okay, what do you think? Should we go over to redacted for the white supremacy part? I don't know. YouTube is a little dicey. Okay, we'll go over to the redacted part for the white supremacy part. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. Greg and I will be recording one today as going to the necessary trip later in the week, etc. So I had to free up some time tomorrow. So anyway, regardless of that, you can also head over to Redacted to see the rest of this, to Rumble or Odysee or BitChute. Sorry, I never remember all those. And have a wonderful, wonderful day. Ha.